To understand the traditional framework of the Vedas, we must discard the modern assumption that they are simply historical books written by ancient authors. The text defines the Vedas as Apaurusheya, a Sanskrit term meaning unauthored. This framework treats them as eternal principles of knowledge, existing independently of human history. This premise is built directly into the linguistic architecture of the word itself. In Sanskrit, the term Veda derives from 4 distinct applications of the root vid. It means vid to know, vid to exist, vidli to obtain, and vid to deliberate. By attaching specific grammatical suffixes, gun and ktin, to these base roots, the precise definitions solidify. Veda becomes the instrument through which true existence and knowledge are obtained and deliberated. Shruti, another term for the texts, derives from the root for hearing, referring to the unbroken transmission of this knowledge from the beginning of time. Because this knowledge is unauthored, its origin point is defined by specific philosophical attributes rather than a biological identity. The originating entity is described as pure, indestructible consciousness, chit, completely devoid of ignorance, and characterized by ultimate pervasive bliss, known as ananda. This demands a specialized approach to reading the text. Traditional Vedic epistemology requires treating the words as the underlying linguistic and philosophical fabric of reality itself, rather than human literature. The scriptural proofs for this framework are highly specific. In the Shatapatha Brahmana, we find a direct logical equation. The term yagya, typically meaning sacrifice, is explicitly equated with Vishnu, representing the omnipresent supreme being that orchestrates reality. From this equation, the text constructs a structural metaphor for the universe. It introduces the concept of Skambha, the cosmic pillar or foundational support that sustains all of existence. The 4 Vedas are maths directly onto the anatomy of this cosmic pillar. The Atharvaveda is equated to its face, the Samaveda acts as the hair, the Yajurveda is the heart, and the Rigveda represents the Prana, or the vital breath. Building on the idea of breath, the Maitreyi Brahmana defines the actual manifestation of the Vedas into the physical world. It describes their emergence as an effortless, natural exhalation of this supreme being. But the physical universe eventually undergoes pralaya, or total cosmic dissolution. During this phase, the Vedas do not cease to exist. They are preserved in an unmanifested state. The text likens this to a massive, complex tree that retracts and survives entirely intact within the data of a single dormant seed. Within this model, foundational knowledge is never created, nor is it ever destroyed. It merely cycles endlessly between unmanifested preservation and active cosmic expression. This model immediately presents a mechanical paradox. If the Supreme Being is formless, how does it generate highly structured linguistic output without physical instruments like vocal cords or a respiratory system? The text resolves this by examining human cognition. Right now, as you think, your intelligence silently formulates exact words and sentences in your mind without vibrating your vocal cords or exhaling breath. The divine transmission mechanism operates on this exact same principle of direct, formless cognitive transfer. Having established how the transmission occurs, the text then proves why it was mathematically necessary, using the thought experiment of the completely isolated child. If a human child is placed in absolute isolation from birth, provided with physical sustenance but given zero linguistic, social, or educational interaction, the outcome is predictable. That child will develop a complete absence of human-level cognition. The text reinforces this with a secondary analogy of uninstructed forest dwellers. Without the structured input of external education, human behavior defaults entirely to animalistic instinct. The conclusion is, human intelligence is a highly capable receiver, but it requires an initial signal. The foundational concepts of human civilization, duty, wealth, desire, and liberation, required a primary external divine input at the onset of history to initiate human cognition. The exact transmission pathway for this initial signal is documented. The knowledge was encoded directly into the consciousness of 4 primeval human subjects at the start of creation: Agni, Vayu, Aditya, and Angira. Using the hermeneutic rule of Lakshana, or implied meaning, the text clarifies these names refer to conscious human entities, not the physical elements of fire, wind, and sun. Knowledge requires a cognitive receiver, and inanimate matter cannot learn. This selective transmission raises a theological issue. If the Supreme Being is impartial, why choose only these 4 specific individuals to receive the initial data? The justification is merit-based. These specific souls were selected for the immense punya, or merit, systematically accumulated during prior cosmic cycles. This relies on a massive underlying axiom. The soul, karma, and the causal universe itself are eternal, operating in an endless loop without a definitive beginning. Because of this eternal cycle, accepting historical truth, or itihasa, requires a rigid epistemological framework. The text uses the frameworks of ancient logicians Gautama and Vatsyayana, specifically the concept of aptopadesha. Aptopadesha restricts valid history strictly to the teachings of aptas, fully realized, flawless, and compassionate sages, whose perception of reality is unobstructed. Under this strict definition, the text completely rejects more recent Puranic or Tantric texts, classifying their mythologies as invalid and unprovable. Traditional Vedic transmission does not rely on standard human historiography. It relies on a philosophically rigorous, merit-based chain of custody that spans across cosmic cycles. To understand the scale of those cosmic cycles, we have to look at the macro-scale architecture of Vedic cosmology. It operates on a mathematical scale of deep time that dwarfs conventional history. The macrostructure is divided into the Brahma Dina, the day of Brahma, or creation phase, and the Brahma Ratri, the night of Brahma, or dissolution phase. Each of these phases spans exactly 1,000 Chatra Yugis, or Great Yugas. A single Brahma Dina is divided into 14 subunits called Manvantaras. Exactly 71 Chatra Yugis fit into a single Manvantara. One Chatra Yugi is constructed from 4 smaller yugas. The Satya Yuga lasts 1,728,000 years. Treta Yuga is 1,296,000. Dwapara Yuga is 864,000, and Kali Yuga is 432,000. Together, one Chatur-yugi equals exactly 4.32 million years. The text uses this interlocking system to calculate our exact historical position. 6 full Manvantaras have already passed in the current cycle, placing us in the 7th, known as the Vaivasvata Manvantara. Zooming in further, 27 Chatur-yugis have elapsed within this 7th Manvantara. Humanity is currently sitting in the 28th, exactly 4,976 years into its Kali Yuga phase. When you synthesize the entire mathematical calculation presented in the text, exactly 1,960,852,976 years have elapsed since the creation of the current universe and the initial revelation of the Vedas. Vedic time is not a vague mythological concept meant to evoke a sense of ancient wonder. It is a hyper-specific, mathematically verifiable chronological ledger. Tracking an almost 2 billion-year timeline requires a specialized mathematical vocabulary. The traditional Indian numbering system, codified in texts like the Surya Siddhanta, scales from Eka, meaning 1, all the way up to Parartha, representing 100 quadrillion, simply to possess the language necessary for this math. This timeline was preserved practically through the Sankalpa recitation. Every day, traditional scholars recite the exact cosmic date, updating the yuga, the year, the month, the phase of the moon, and the day. It functions as an unbroken, Bailey updated historical ledger, passing across generations. This immense, mathematically rigorous framework eventually collided directly with the academic establishment of 19th century Western Indology. Western scholars like Professor Horace Hayman Wilson and Max Muller attempted to date the texts using linear historical models, resulting in estimates placing the origin of the Vedas at a mere 2,400 to 3,100 years ago. The text exposes these Western estimates as miscalculations. They were rooted in an ignorance of the daily Sankalpa tradition and the deep mathematical reality of the Vedic timeline that Indian scholars had been updating daily for centuries. The conflict is structural. Early Western Indology attempted to force the texts into a bounded linear historical timeline, but traditional Vedic scholarship operates on a vast, cyclical, mathematical model that renders a 3,000-year timeline insignificant. The source text serves as a systematic, logical dismantling of colonial historiography. It proves that the epistemological and cosmological scale of the Vedas exists on a framework far beyond the boundaries of conventional human history.